Sweet angel voices. A young woman named Sadie. That is who she was, but where was she? Where had she settled? She knew the names and places, but didn't really know the people, the town, and the sea. Meredith. It was the name of a small coastal town. It was bright and sunny, and the warm summer air from the sea swept in long, loving waves of comfort. It was a welcoming town, warm and smooth to the touch, as it were. Sadie was a 22-year-old girl from Chicago. She had lost her mother some time ago, and now she spent her days living with her father on the outskirts of the town. For the last few months, she would play the violin near the ocean side, hearing the rush of the waves and letting it soothe her inner soul. She needed that soothing, that comfort, because something was terribly wrong with Sadie, and sweet sounds made her feel so much better. Between her moods and blackouts in school, she didn't know what made her feel so strange as of late. Why it made her say odd and offensive things to local strangers. After considering her circumstance, she chalked it all up to the change of scenery, the new move to a strange town. It made sense, after all. The tranquil tourist town of Meredith was far different than the gunshot-ridden boroughs of sordid Chicago, and this would take some getting used to. Still, she was fascinated by a whimsical tone, some kind of music that came from the deep green sea. It haunted her dreams, and she knew there was a connection between the blue-lit cemeteries that lined the rocky coast of her home and the black slime that she used to make herself feel aroused. They had seeped through the old cemetery bricks near the roadway, and Sadie now collected it for her own odd pleasures. More so, she had an ever-increasing interest in music. And why not? She was a musician, after all. This evening, as the sun was setting, Sadie began to walk past the college she attended and stood very still just outside of the church that she was attending across the street. She stood there oddly ticking her head back and forth. Something was familiar here, but she could not put her finger on it. Perhaps it was the choir. Yeah, the choir, and the sweet singing that came from inside. Then she shook her head again. She thought about something horrible now, how 7 small children had disappeared from the town, and she now realized that most had been in the church choir. Was there something more to this? For days the local authorities searched, and today they searched again. Sadie would often see police cars pass by, still searching for those missing children. She was actually angered at this thought. She wanted to do something about it, to end this heinous crime, as if some queer psychic vibe was strung. Sadie saw a shadow rush through the bushes from right behind the church. "Hey, you! What are you doing here?" she cried out instantly. She was going to turn to the street and alert the police, but they were long gone. She knew she had to take a risk and act now. If she did not, this shadow culprit would never be found. Sadie ran and ran and ran, finally following the blurry dark shadow to a long stretch of rocky coast. The night was falling and dusk was upon her soon. The sunset light began to paint the flowers and rocks around her in deep shades of color. She soon discovered the remains of a shack, now half collapsed, with a small music box sitting atop the fallen wood of the shed. Around it was a long shale grotto of orange stones. They were orange stones, she remembered, and it was here Sadie saw what she came for. 4 small children were locked in what appeared to be huge bird cages made of bronze metal. When Sadie got there, she quickly set one pair of children free. She realized these were the children missing from the church choir. The 2 children sat among the field of flowers and wheat stalks. They were really dressed odd. The little girl was wearing a black garment and veil with dark eye makeup, and the boy next to her dressed in a tiny black suit and a funny little top hat that matched his outfit. They were both frightened. Sadie was afraid to ask, but she knew there were only 4 kids left out of the 7 missing. "It's going to be all right," she said. Then she asked where the other 3 kids had gone. The cute child couple simply pointed to the ledge of the rocky outcrop. Sadie followed their pointing fingers and got near the top of the ledge. She peered down and gasped. For there before her, over 50 feet below, were 3 crumpled bird cages, and dark, bloody smears on all of them. It was clear they had been thrown from the cliff. But why? "What happened here?" Sadie asked, both enraged and disgusted. "They were thrown off the cliff because they wouldn't sing anymore," the little girl answered. "I don't understand. How did this happen?" Sadie asked again. This time the boy spoke. "We'll sing for you. We will, we promise," he said. "You can take your pictures and we'll sing just like the last time," he said. And just right then, he and the small girl began to sway from side to side and sing. They sang old church songs in high-pitched, innocent voices, and Sadie quickly discovered that she was suddenly enamored by the sweet sound of it all. "Okay, stop it, you two. I'm going to release the other children and take you back home. Everybody in town are looking for you guys." All the children just looked at her in bafflement, and out of fear, began singing even louder. As the singing grew louder, Sadie found herself very strangely aroused, not sexually, but in a comforting way. And it wasn't arousal for the children either, but for a certain high frequency in their singing. And that bizarre black slime began to seep from her eyes and ears again. Under her skirt, she could feel her panties getting wet, excited from that bizarre tone, that high-pitched frequency, and she looked down to see a long stream of black liquid moving sleek and shiny down her legs. "No, what the hell is all this?" she screamed. She rushed towards the other children and began to open their cages. "Don't worry, I'm going to rescue you all. I'm going to rescue you all," Sadie shouted in determination. But even as she shouted, she tripped over a small wood table, and a stack of photos fell from it. Sadie picked up the photos, and when she saw what was in them, she screamed. She screamed so hard, her lips quivered. The 2 children in the flower patch ran to the child's friends and released the hooks on their cages. The boy grabbed the other children, and in a barrel of monkey fashion, they all held hands and ran off into the evening brush, leaving Sadie alone on the cliff edges. Those lonely cliff edges, how strange they were again. "Why? Why?" Sadie cried. She took her fist towards the open sea. She shook her fist towards the ocean, the salty air gently biting at her face. She saw a huge storm brewing over the sea ahead and heading straight towards the town now. "You could have told me," she shouted at the sea, the deep green sea, and something sentient in it was angry, and it sent a psychic caress to her. "What is all this?" She slumped down on the clover patches near the coastline, and she cried. Her shoulders had slumped over in defeat. The wind rushed in from the sea now and blew the stack of photos all about. One in particular swept through the air and floated down right in front of her, and there Sadie was forced to view it again. In that photo was a young woman. She was manic and crazed. The images of the woman seemed to be dancing as the children sang in tandem together, and it seemed the women enjoyed the sweet sounds of their voices, and written all around the photos in all too familiar handwriting was the quote, "I'm busy collecting angels. They seem so sweet." But far more disturbing was the person in the photo. That wild, wide-eyed, freakishly manic young woman, a woman dripping in Gothic patterns of black and ooze, a young woman named Sadie.